This is the show where NFL legends come to tell their stories. This is the show where we spotlight what's good in the world of sports. This is also the show where we appreciate the NFL Alumni Association and the Gridiron Greats. For this is Thursday Night Tailgate with your hosts, Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazzari. Guys, it's finally tonight. I've waited all day. Have a good time and take it away.
Good evening, folks. Welcome to another edition of Thursday Night Tailgate, where your favorite NFL legends live. Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazzari here with you to kick off week number 6 in the 2018 NFL season. And tonight, we got another great lineup that we're looking forward to sharing with you, plus our 5-star picks of the week with Tony Collins, and our favorite segment of the show, our spotlight on the positive that brings it all together, if you will, and puts a nice positive bow on the night for us. And I'm in a great mood tonight, folks. You know, it's a couple of days of carryover from the Red Sox eliminating the Yankees in Yankee Stadium after Aaron Judge poked the bear on his way out of Fenway Park last week playing New York. So feeling pretty good about that. Karma always comes back to bite you, you know, and this is why they teach these guys to say all the right things, right? You know, Judge walks out of there saying, hey, a big win tonight. We're looking forward to getting back to Yankee Stadium and playing well there and, you know, hopefully closing the series out, blah, blah, blah. You know, who knows what happens. But you start talking about, you know, playing, you know, New York, and, you know, poking fun at the Red Sox fans and really starting to stir things up. Guess what? Now you're sitting at home, and I couldn't be happier. Bob, how are you tonight, my friend?
Good, Chris, and I love your comments about bulletin board material. You never need it, and I would assume that boombox is in somebody's attic far, far away right now.
Indeed. Yeah, I'm sure some of his teammates might have taken that thing out and said, hey, you know, hey, Aaron, can I have that boombox, please? Can I see it for a second? Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so on to the ALCS with the Astros, who are very tough, Bob. 3 aces that they can throw at you any night of the week, and a great lineup, and obviously defending champs. So it certainly doesn't get any easier from here. But there's something satisfying when the Red Sox eliminate the Yankees. You feel like you've gotten way over a hill, a nice little mountain you just got over, and anything from this point on feels a little gravy-ish. I mean, obviously you want to win the World Series. Don't take me wrong. Don't get me wrong. This wasn't the World Series, and it doesn't count for anything other than a series win. But it feels awfully good, and looking forward to Saturday night and the start of the ALCS, Bob.
Chris, whatever happens from them now on, yeah, they want to win, but it does give them bragging here in that rivalry. But it ought to be interesting. You know, I think it should be a good series. I mean, back in March, I picked Houston and the Dodgers in the World Series, so I still got a shot with that. But we'll see, Chris. That's why they play the games, man. It's great.
Indeed. All right, on to tonight, right? And we're looking forward to a lot of fun tonight. Our first guest is going to be Yale head football coach Tony Reno. Bob, I look forward to hearing Tony's thoughts as they prepare for Mercer this coming Saturday night. Plus, you know, and I know coaches never like to look ahead, and I'm not going to ask Coach to look ahead, but we've talked to, you know, our good friend Marco Iannuzzi about this, the game, right? Yale-Harvard. Yale has won 2 in a row now, but Harvard had won the previous 9 straight. But Tony has gotten Yale to the last 2 in a row, and they're off to a decent start this year. So looking forward to having Tony as his maiden voyage, if you will, on TNT tonight.
Yeah, he's been a great friend, Chris, since he got the job in 2012. Again, he's a native of Massachusetts, and ironically, he was a coach at both Yale and Harvard. Harvard before he even got to Yale, and he's still a young man, 7th year now, and again He's joined us on a TV side every year since he's been there, and he's just a very straightforward, good guy. And you'll notice that it's more about off the field stuff than football for him. But Coach Yale again last year, Chris, that was magical, 9-1. That was their first outright title in 37 years. Pretty cool. So it's going to be always fun to talk to him.
Yeah, looking forward to the opportunity, and he'll be with us about 10 minutes from now. Following him, as we do every week, Tony Collins will be joining us and helping to lead us through our 5-star picks of the week for Week 6 here in the NFL. That'll happen around 8:30. Following Tony, we're going to get a return visit from former Chicago Bears Pro Bowl defensive back Mark Carrier. And Bob, we talked a little bit about this last week, but the Bears might be the most surprising team in the league right now. They're 3-1 coming off a bye. They play at Miami this week, and looking forward to getting Mark's thoughts on that game and, obviously how the Bears have done so far this season. Plus, when I look back at the Bears during Mark's career, looking at their splits, Mark, when he was there, right, 73-64 on Sundays, but 7-12 on Monday nights. And typically Monday nights are the marquee matchups of the week. But there was something, I'm curious, was there something else about the Monday nights that impacted their success during the season when they had those games? So looking forward to hearing Mark's thoughts about that, Bob.
That's a very good get on your part as far as that stat. But, this is a guy, I thought he was very, very underrated, Chris. He spent 11 years in the league, and he had 10 picks in his rookie season with the Bears, and went to 3 Pro Bowls. But there was another Mark Carrier that played in the league, and maybe that has something to do with it. But hell of a player, hell of a guy. We like him here.
Yes, we do. He'll join us about 45 minutes from now. Then we'll kick off hour number 2 with a return visit from guest number 1 on episode number 1 of this show, and that's, of course, former Steelers linebacker Levon Kirkland. And Bob, having Greg Lloyd on the show with us last week, and he confirmed how he and Kevin Green would occasionally override the defensive play calls from the sidelines. And then when Marvin Lewis would call down, he was the linebackers coach for the Steelers at the time, when he would call down from the booth wondering who changed the plays, Greg would, of course, say, well, Kirk made that call. So I wonder if that's exactly how Levon remembers it. And we've talked about this a few times with him, but, touch on it again. And also, of course, want to get Levon's take on the Steelers defense. Look a little better last Sunday than they had all season long. So I don't know if that is due to the Falcons not being that good, on the offensive line, because the Steelers had 6 sacks in that game, or maybe the Steelers have started to come together a little bit and found a little something, and maybe we can expect better things from their defense the rest of the way, but it'll be good to get Levon's thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, he's been very kind to us over the years, and it goes without saying he's one of our favorites here on TNT, Chris. Was such a rock on those Steeler defenses of the 90s. Never missed games. We always talk about that over 11 years, which makes him a very special player, and you and I both agree that he's a heck of a special person, too.
Yes, he is, and we look forward to having him back on the show. He'll be here about an hour from now. And then we'll round out tonight's episode with a return visit from former Pitt, Chargers, and Eagles defensive end Burt Grossman. And we'll get Burt's thoughts on, curious, Pitt can't seem to get back to being a top 25 program, and I wonder why that is, and I want to talk to him a little bit more about that, plus get his thoughts on the Chargers so far this season, and then what it was like. He had 1 year up in Philadelphia playing for the Eagles, and we always hear about how difficult but how loyal the Eagles fans are, so I want to get his perspective on that 1 year in Philly. But Bob, one of the great things about Burt is he always tells it like it is.
He's very forthright, Chris, former Pitt Panther who, again, forced to retire early due to injury. And it's sad because he was an incredible pass rusher. And, he's going on to do some great things both in the media area and around San Diego. So we'll get to talk to him more about that.
He will be along with us about 90 minutes from now. So there you have it, folks. We got a great show on tap for you tonight. So sit back, relax, let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next couple of hours. And as you guys know, we are brought to you by the great folks over at the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, the Salt Creek Golf Retreat up in beautiful Nashville, Indiana. Our partners at the NFL Alumni Association and Mike Ditka's organization, the Gridiron Greats, who we love very much. Please go online and check them out at gridirongreats.org. Also, check out former Houston Oilers quarterback Dan Pastorini and his company, DP Quality Foods. Dan has a lineup of award-winning spices that you're going to love. Go online to dpqualityfoods.com to see all the great things that they have available for you there.
It's time for another edition of Bob's Take. So, Bob, tell us, what's on your mind tonight?
All right, let's get into this week's edition of Bob's Take. And, Bob, I want to start by getting your thoughts on the NFC East division. You got the Redskins that are leading the division right now at 2-2, coming off a blowout loss to the Saints on Monday night. You got the Cowboys and the Eagles both 2-3, and you got the Giants 1-4. Eagles and Giants going at it tonight. We'll talk about that with Tony in a little bit. But could this division be a winner or get a winner that is either 8-8 or worse? What's your take on the NFC East?
Yes. I mean, quite frankly, I mean, it's like they're going to be losing one, winning one. That's Washington right now, Chris, at 2-2 has scored a grand total of just 83 points and given up more than they've scored. I mean, every team in that division has given up more than they scored, and that does not bode well. I mean, if you look back in history, if you have a division, even half a season, teams doing that, I'm talking specifically about giving up more than they score. That's a 500 division for everything. So, yeah, somebody's probably going to finish. Somebody may eke out a 9-7 season, Chris, and do that. And when you think about it, it could be any of the first three. Giants at 1-4 is going to be very tough for them to really right the ship that much. But again, it could. If you had a three-headed coin, you want to flip it between those teams because again, they all have issues. They're having trouble scoring, and the whole division's having trouble scoring. And you know, in this league, you got to score points, especially when none of those defenses totally shut down type.
And Bob, staying sort of right there, the second thing I want to get your thoughts on are the Giants. You mentioned it could be hard for them to get right the ship and get back in this thing. Again, 1-4. Last season they finished 3-13, and we tended to give them a pass a little bit because of all the injuries they had, particularly at the wide receiver position. But here they are, right? Struggling again. Were we wrong to give them a pass last season? Did the injury excuse sort of mask the fact that maybe this just really isn't a very good football team? What's your take?
When you have a new coach, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, you know, Mike Shula, you're still getting used to all these. It was just tough that Shula had to come in here and deal with some veterans, some rookies. I mean, you could tell they're still trying to get this new system in place. The talent is there. There's no question. I mean, you got Barkley and Beckham and even Manning. I mean, at an advanced age, this is a team. Barkley has done everything they've asked for him. I mean, he's catching balls out of the backfield at an incredible pace, and I think he's already got over 30 out of the backfield. And these guys, well, Beckham does, I should say, but Barkley's right up there too. And I mean, the problem there, Chris, is it looks to me, if I had to talk about this team's problems in a nutshell, they just don't get enough takeaways. I think they only have a few, about maybe 4 picks as the entire team over the first few games. But as far as fumble recoveries, there's basically nothing there. So it's a team that doesn't really have the playmakers on defense yet, and I think that's their major problem. But I think, you know, giving them a few more games, then we could say, okay, they should be ready to go now and used to the system in place because there's talent there, and there's really shouldn't be an excuse. And this team, even with new coaches, et cetera, should not be 1-4.
Bob, one more here, and overall, when you look around the league and you look at the standings, so many teams are at or near 500. But I'm curious to get your take. Is there a team or maybe 2 teams that, you know, you look at and you say, hey, these guys are on the path to being major disappointments over what we expected from the beginning of the season?
Well, that's there's always those bunch that we always talk about. I mean, to me, the Falcons, it was like 1 and 1A in that division in the NFC South. It wasn't a question of them scoring points because I just didn't think they would be this bad defensively. I mean, it was either Atlanta or New Orleans having a good shot at the Super Bowl. I ultimately settled on New Orleans, but the Falcons, to me, their window, they're getting into that Arizona Cardinals type situation, Chris, where they were good for a few years, but that crew is not going to last that long. But that's one team that's the team that really stands out. It's got to be them. And of course, Oakland, very disappointing with Gruden in place and the quarterback they gave all that money to, and they just haven't been able to put it together, and especially being in the same division with Kansas City, Oakland's pretty much going to be done pretty soon if they don't get it going. So, but those are the teams that immediately come to mind that we expected. I don't think too many fans didn't expect too much more from those teams. So we will see. But Falcons right now, I think they're right at the top of the most disappointing team, and Bo Bach must be going crazy about now, our good friend, right?
That's right. And I had the Raiders doing some good things. I really thought John Gruden was going to get that offense going, so I've been disappointed so far from what I've seen from the Raiders. All right, there you go, folks. That is this week's edition of Bob's Take. And here on TNT, we are sponsored by the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. And if you love the game of baseball, you got to go check out the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory right there in beautiful Louisville, Kentucky. And they were inducted into the TripAdvisor Certificate of Excellence Hall of Fame in the museum. It's such a wonderful experience for everybody in your family because you get to walk their live production line and see some of the 1.8 million bats that they make every year. And they've been doing it now for 134 years. You hear me bragging about the Bat Vault every week because you get to go in there and see so many legendary bats that were a game used by guys like Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, my hero growing up, Willie Stargell. To find out more information about the museum and to book your visit, go online to sluggermuseum.com. And I also want to remind you about our newest sponsor and one of our wonderful TNT Hall of Famers from this year, and that is former Houston Oilers quarterback Dan Pastorini and DP Quality Foods. Let's hear about Dan Pastorini and great spices that they have. And on the other side of that, we've got our first guest, Tony Reno, hanging on the line. And we're going to get to Tony right after this message about DP Quality Foods.
Most folks are familiar with Dan Pastorini's accomplishments on the football field or in race cars. But what most don't know? Dan's family background in the restaurant business. For 37 years, Dan's parents, Dante and Dorothy, owned and operated Pastorini's Longhorn Restaurant. So the Pastorini family has a long history of making great-tasting food from family recipes. Dan and his partners want to bring some of that to you with their Texas-style rub, Texas-style hickory rub, and their garlic and herb seasoning. First introduced back in 2011, Dan's Texas-style rub immediately began winning awards, taking home the first-place trophy for Best Ribs at the Pasadena Livestock Show and Barbecue Cook-Off. They did it again at the 2012 Texas Ranger Wounded Warrior Cook-Off, and the awards just keep on coming. Check out Dan's line of spices online at dpqualityfoods.com. That's dpqualityfoods.com. And take what you put on the grill to a whole new level.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, go online to dpqualityfoods.com to see Dan's wonderful array of spices. All right, now joining us here on Thursday Night Tailgate is Yale head football coach Tony Reno. Let me give you some background on Tony. He is from Oxford, Massachusetts. Played his college ball at Worcester State. After college, he became an assistant coach at King's College in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. In 1998, he went back to his alma mater as a defensive coordinator. In 2003, he joined Yale as a wide receivers coach and later became their defensive backs coach. Left Yale for Harvard in 2009 and became their special teams and defensive backs coach. Came back to Yale in 2012 and took over as their head coach. Last season led them to a 9-1 regular season and the Ivy League championship, and we are honored to have him with us tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Coach, Chris and Bob here. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, Tony.
Hey, fellas. How are you tonight?
We're fantastic, Coach. Thanks for being here. Before we get into all the football stuff, as I was researching your career, I saw on your Wikipedia page that your wife's name is also Tony. Got to be incredibly difficult when you guys are out in public together and someone yells, "Hey, Tony."
Yeah, it is. It's interesting, isn't it? You know, you get married and your wife shares your name, so it's great. We one fact we made is that we weren't going to name any of our children either Anthony or Antoinette, so we wouldn't have three of us.
So, Coach, I want to get your perspective because you had the unique opportunity to coach on both sides of the game, the Yale-Harvard game, and it's one of the great rivalries in college football, and it's gone your way the last couple of seasons. Harvard had it the previous 9. You were a part of a couple of those as well. So how do both schools look at that game, and what is it like for the week during that week leading up to the game?
Oh, it's it's an honor to be part of this incredible rivalry, which, obviously we feel is the greatest rivalry in college football and arguably one of the top 5, in any book. But it really is one of those things where you've got these two great institutions, and that are elite in everything, that play each other in a game once a year, that really rallies the communities of both schools and the towns and everyone involved with Yale or that school up north. Really rallies around this game. And, you know, for both schools and for the players and the coaches and the fans, I mean, it's a full game atmosphere. I mean, it's a week long of preparation by the universities on both sides. And, you know, the kids don't attend class. I think Thursday on. I mean, they're traveling to that school and they're up there with their friends and their classmates or their alumni and they're, you know, having a good time getting ready for the game. So it's a really unique opportunity. And, you know, playing the bowl. I mean, last year we won the Ivy Championship in front of 55,000. We play up there, up in Cambridge, and that sells out around 34,000. So, you know, it's a incredible opportunity for our kids and for our communities.
And Coach, this year's game is going to be played at Fenway Park, and you mentioned a moment ago, you're already playing one of the game's, you know, greatest stadiums, the Yale Bowl. But does playing this year at Fenway take this game up yet another notch?
I think it just adds to the tradition and the pageantry of the game. It's, you know, it's one of those games you could play it anywhere. We could play it, you know, at a high school, and in the middle of Nebraska, and there would be people finding a way to get there because it's such a unique thing and it's such a great rivalry. But obviously, when you put it in such an iconic venue as Fenway Park, it just adds to it. So, you know, for us, I mean, we're of the mentality we play anywhere at any time. So wherever they tell us they're spotting the ball, we'll be there.
Bob, questions for Coach?
Tony, it's always a pleasure to speak to you, and thanks again for being on the TV side for years leading up to this, and now we're taking it to the radio side, so I appreciate your devotion. And we've talked about it in the past, Tony, about how you played at Worcester State. And tell us about when you first got the coaching bug, Tony. When did you really know that, hey, I might want to do this full time and make a living at it?
You know, it's really unique that I played for this. My high school football coach, John Deldorian, was an incredible mentor for me, and really was, outside my father, the person who influenced me the most in my life. And that was really a unique opportunity to play for such a guy who was tough, but he was fair, and he was such a great mentor. And I went to college, and I remember sitting in my head coach's office my junior year, and we had some good teams. I was fortunate to be part of some good teams there. And it was the end of my junior season, and he said, "What do you want to do when you get out of here?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it." And he said, "What do you like to do?" And I said, "You know, I like to play football." And he said, "Well, why don't you try coaching?" So I was fortunate enough to get an internship at Kings in Pennsylvania, and then, you know, I haven't worked a day in my life since.
And Tony, how last year was, again, magical season for you guys, topped off by that victory over Harvard. The Ivy League title, has that given a quote-unquote more than normal boost to recruiting this year?
You know, I think obviously anytime you have success, it helps everything. And you know, we've been very fortunate. Yeah, we've had 3 of the top 5 recruiting classes in the country in the last 3 years. So our juniors were number 2 in the country. Our sophomores were 5, and our freshmen were number 2 in the country. So the only other school to do that was North Dakota State. And we've been fortunate that way, where we've been able to recruit really well. Obviously, I think the success we had last season really is due to the fact that we've got some great kids and they worked their tails off for it. And we're very fortunate from President Salve on through, you know, Tom Beckett and now Vicki Chun. We've got great athletic directors who support us. And then that all helps recruiting. You know, when you go to a school and I sit there and say our president is, you know, when they see President Salve, when the players enter the Yale Bowl and he's the last guy that they slap hands with before they walk on the field, or, you know, our director of athletics is on the sidelines. I mean, that's different. I mean, it just shows how important football is to Yale and the Yale community, and I'm just honored to be part of it. And those pieces really help in the recruiting process.
Coach, you guys have Mercer coming up this Saturday. Mercer's 3-2, and their offense is putting up almost 39 points per game over their last 4 games. So how are you trying to deal with those guys, and what are you looking forward to come this Saturday?
You know, it's interesting. When I was hired at Yale, you don't control much of the out-of-conference schedule because it's so far in advance. We book out 10 years in advance. And when we looked at the scheduling and we had some openings, I sat with Coach Koza and I said, Coach, give me, I'm about to look at our first out-of-conference scheduling. What's the mentality you always had? And he said to me, Tony, my mentality was always to schedule great schools, great people, the best that we can. So he took me through the times when, Yale was playing the academies and went up to Boston College and went down over to Hawaii and playing some great teams. And so, obviously to me, my job is to make sure I honor that guy every time and do right by him and all those who've worn the Yale uniform for 145 years. And we looked out and we scheduled a team in the Southern Conference who's, we played Maine, who was 16 in the country a few weeks ago, and this Mercer team played Auburn 24/7 last year. So they're extremely talented. They've got a ton of speed. You mentioned their offense. They'll be the fastest team that's been in Yale Bowl in quite some time. And it'll be a great challenge for us, but it'll also be a good test for us as we really enter the meat of our Ivy League schedule starting next week.
And Tony, as you mentioned, Yale Bowl, right? We're about a month shy from the Yale Bowl turning 104 years old. And at a time when stadiums that are, as young as 20 or 30 years old are being torn down, imploded, and replaced, you guys play in a stadium that is one of the most revered in the country. And want to get your thoughts on the Yale Bowl and what it's like playing in that building.
I was very fortunate to be part of the 100th anniversary game of the Bowl against Army in 2014. And I think at that moment, I always appreciated how much history and how much Yale has really embraced rebuilding the Yale Bowl and making it great again. Again, that's we're very fortunate to be in a stadium where we just finished. President Salve just redid all the seats in the stadium. So all the seats are done over again. And when you look at it and you walk down that tunnel, you get chills every time. Whether it's a practice or a game, and you come in that stadium and you walk on that field and you say, this is a field that people have been walking on and playing this great game for over 100 years. So we're very fortunate to be part of a long line of history and incredible men who walked on that field and played this great game. So it's an honor, and I think it tells you a lot about Yale. Again, going back to a lot of schools are downsizing. You mentioned it. That school up north is downsizing their stadium. And we haven't. We're saying that football is that important at Yale. We want to make sure that we have a facility which shows that.
Bob, more for Coach?
And Tony, we talked about the rigors of a coach like yourself who has a family, and it's a year-round job, as we know, and how it is tough to juggle. Is it any easier now, Tony, than it was when you took over in 2012, as far as now you being kind of used to things, or has there strategies in place now that kind of make you don't spread yourself so thin?
Yeah, I think that obviously once you've done things for some time, you're able to get into I don't want to say a routine, but you understand what needs to be done. Things aren't new, that you've done them before. But for us, I always look at every day as like either getting better or you're getting worse. So we always say you're either growing or dying. And for us as a football family, and for me as individually, we have to try and improve every single day in every facet of our football family, in our business. And I look at it that way. And I'm very fortunate to have an incredible wife and 3 great kids who are are partners with me in this in this great job I have. And it's been a joy since day one. And like I said to the team tonight when I was on the field, I said, fellas, I just love coaching these guys. I'm very fortunate. We've got a great culture and a great team. And so everything we do is, I enjoy it. So the recruiting, the traveling, all that stuff, it's, when some people say, you travel a lot, but I look at it as like I'm building our team. Like I'm going out there and trying to handpick the next running back or offensive guard or defensive tackle. And to me, that's just a great challenge, but also it's very important that we pick the right guys. So, I look at this job as being, just like I said before, it's just, I'm very fortunate to be in this position and very fortunate to have the support we have.
And finally, Tony, a very competitive Ivy League this year. Tough loss to Dartmouth last week, but Princeton will be the last home game this year. They look incredibly good, and of course, yourself and Harvard are going to be there. It must be very exciting when you get back to these Ivy League games because these guys are really competitive.
It's so true. You look at the season, we had last year. It goes down to the second last weekend when we clinched at Princeton, and then obviously, beat Harvard to get it outright. That it was, obviously down to the last bell, the last whistle on the outright championship, and it's going to be similar this year. Every team, anyone can beat anybody in our league. We went up to Cornell, we beat them up there, and that's a great team. They're a very good team. But it came down to the last two drives. We were able to score, to go up, 2 scores, and they had the ball. And, we had to make a stop to, obviously keep them from scoring and kicking an onside kick. And, the Dartmouth game last week, it got away from us a little bit, in the first half. And then we had a comeback, and we were sitting there, with 3.5 minutes left, and, knocking on the door, making it a 1-score game. And, for how many mistakes we made, we still were in it at the end. So you have to be ready to win, on the last possession of the game. And that's kind of what Ivy League football is all about. And that's what makes it so exciting.
Coach, before we let you go, let our listeners know, how can they stay up to date with all the great things that you and the Yale program is doing or are doing and follow you, whether it's online or it's on social media?
I think, because of the way, the nature of recruiting, our social, we're very active on social media. So, Twitter and Instagram, at Yale football, on both of those, on Twitter and Instagram. And, that's probably the best way to keep up with just the day to day. And then our football website is InsideYaleFootball.com. Great website, ton of video, ton of content that we put in there, with the rosters and everything that would be good for fans and also recruits and alumni. So, I think obviously, with this opportunity to speak to the greater Yale community on how much we appreciate the support they've given us and given our student athletes, not only Yale football, but speaking on behalf of Yale athletics, the support that, our great community has given us. And, we can't thank you all enough.
Well, Coach, we can't thank you enough for taking time out of, I'm sure, what is a normally very busy night to come and be a part of the show. We hope you'll come back and join us again, perhaps later on in the season. Keep us updated on how Yale is doing, but we can't thank you enough for your time tonight, and all the best to you and your family.
Always a pleasure, Tony.
Thanks, fellas. And, I'd love to be on again. Just let me know, and love to join you and update you on the team.
Thanks, Tony. Take care. We'll catch up soon.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
That is Yale head football coach Tony Reno. And Bob, what a great guy, and obviously an outstanding program, and a lot of history behind that game between Yale and Harvard. To Coach's point, probably one of the top 2 or 3 college rivalries that there are, and maybe to the top 5 or 10 sports rivalries. So what a wonderful man, and what a great time. Thanks for bringing him on the show.
Oh, he gets it, Chris, because he's been on both sides. But as you can see, very down to earth and keeps his wits about him and what's important in life. Big family man, if you read more about his family and everything. But again, we'll continue to stay in touch with him.
Thank you again. Yeah, looking forward to having him hopefully back on the show sometime later on in the college football season, maybe before the Harvard game, so we can really understand all the great things that happened during that week. We've got our next guest, Tony Collins, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Tony on the other side of this quick station break.
Thursday Night Tailgate, where the spotlight is always on the positive. Tune in Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time to hear your favorite NFL legends, players, and coaches sharing their stories. Now back to Chris and Bob.
I wouldn't joke about anything else that happens here tonight.
Hey, we're back here on Thursday Night Tailgate, and now joining us in his regular weekly time slot is former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins. Hey, Tone, how are you tonight?
Hi, Tony.
Doing fantastic. How you doing, Chris and Bob?
Really well.
Fine,
Thank you, Tony. So, Tony, looking back at last week, you and I had really good weeks. It may be the first time ever that you and I had a better week than Bob. I can't remember a time when both of us actually had a better week than Bob. But 4-1 for you and me, Bob. 3-2. So when you look back on the results, we all correctly picked the Bengals over the Dolphins, and we all had the Rams over the Seahawks. Tony, you and I had the Chiefs over the Jags. Bob took Jacksonville in that one. And, Tony, you took the Falcons over the Steelers. Shame on you. Bob and I had that one right. And and you were the only one, congratulations, to take the Vikings over the Eagles. So 4-1, you and me, Bob 3-2. And for the season now, Tony, you are out in front now. You've gotten your nose ahead. You're 12-7-1. Bob 11-8-1, and I'm 10-9-1. So I've gotten myself back in the race, and you've gotten yourself a 1-game lead. So congratulations, Tony.
Let's go, baby. Let's go.
He's been waiting for that for a long time.
Yeah, you're right about that, Bob. All right, so on to this week. And our first game is the one going on over all of our shoulders, I'm sure. We got the 2-3 Eagles at the 1-4 Giants. The Eagles are a 1-point road favorite in this one. The over-under is 44.5. Tony, who do you like tonight?
You know, I saw somewhere that the last 18 games that the Eagles and the Giants have played, the Eagles are 14-4 against the Giants. And I don't think the Eagles are even going to make the playoffs this year. And I'm going for the upset. I'm gonna go against the odds. I'm going with the home team tonight. I know the Giants are down by 7. I think they're down by 7 right now, but I think the Giants are going to come pull this game off. They're going to win. I'm going with the Giants with the upset 24-21 Giants.
All right. Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, I made my pick before the game, and I'm going to say the Giants too, Chris. For some reason, I just haven't liked what I've seen from Philly so far. Of course, you can't be too happy with the Giants, but the Giants, with those weapons and offense, I mean, they have to score points by default. Again, I'm not too impressed with Philadelphia so far. So, for some reason, I think the Giants, I mean, at 1-5, the fans are just going to revolt. So they have to win this game. I'm going to say the Giants pull it out, close to what Tony said. How about 27-20?
Wow. Okay. Well, fellas, I have a hard time believing that the Giants could follow up a 3-13 season with a second straight bad one. But you know what? Here we are. Offense 23rd in the league in scoring average, and a team that just added Saquon Barkley. Right? They're 28th in the league in rushing offense. They're averaging under 76 yards per game, and they're 23rd in scoring average at a shade under 21. Meanwhile, the defense, they're giving up almost 26 points a game, and their giveaway-takeaway ratio is a -3, which is 27th in the league. Eli isn't helping things out. 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, nothing spectacular there. Middle of the pack in passing yards. So, I don't know. Not much to like about the Giants. So I think they're going to send New York fans home sad again, second time in 3 days after the Yankees lost to the Red Sox. So I think they're going to send the Giants fans home sad. I'm going to go the other way. I'm taking the Eagles. I think they win this game. Very close to the same score you guys have, but I like the Eagles 24-17. Our second game are my 2-1 Steelers going to the 4-1 Bengals, and the Bengals are a 2-point home favorite. The over-under is 53. Tony, you're not going to make another mistake and pick against my boys 2 weeks in a row now, are you?
You know what? I watched Pittsburgh play last week. Man, the offense was clicking, man. So I'm jumping on the bandwagon. I'm going with Pittsburgh this year.
What do you got for a score, Tone? Lose Tony? Bob, you still with us?
I'm here.
All right, so maybe we get Tony back here in a second. Who do you like here?
I'm going to say I like Pittsburgh too, Chris. I think their record against Cincinnati in the last 7 or 8 years, it's something along the lines of 14-3, I think, and they've had especially good luck at Cincinnati, which is where they're playing this game. And I think Tony's right. I mean, the offense is getting it in gear. You mentioned before the defense looks a little better. Yeah, I think it has Steeler victory written all over it on the road. So I'm going to say Steelers 30-20.
All right. So, guys, I see signs. I saw a couple of glimpses of some defense, actually, last week by the Steelers. 6 sacks against the Falcons. They hit Matt Ryan 13 times. Now, they didn't have any passes defended, so no one got their hands on a ball in the air, but pressure on the quarterback was good. They caused a fumble that resulted in a touchdown. Now, you look at the Bengals, Andy Dalton has only been sacked 9 times this season, so the Bengals offensive line is doing a good job, but Dalton is second in the league with 7 interceptions, so he's going to throw it to the Steelers a couple of times. We'll see what they can do with that. But, Steelers, when you look at how they played offensively, to Tony's point, a little bit of clicking with the running game. James Conner, 110 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. So I think the game is going to come down to which team gets more pressure on the quarterback and, which defense does a better job in pass defense. And, both teams near the bottom in that. But kind of something that Tony alluded to a moment ago before we lost his audio. But Ben Roethlisberger, 21-7 all-time against the Bengals. So I'm going to take my boys. I think they win this game 30-23. Third game this week are the 5-0 Rams going to the 2-3 Broncos. The Rams are a 6.5-point road favorite, and the over/under is 52. Tony, any hope that the Broncos are the ones that end the Rams' undefeated season?
Not a chance. Rams all the way, 47-13, blowout.
47-13, Tony Collins blowout special
47.
of the week. Wow. All right. Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess the Broncos can only hope that somehow the altitude is out of control or something for the Rams. But I can't see any reason why they can't even put 30 points on the board by default. The Rams are just that good offensively. So even if they allow a few, Rams are probably going to win this. How about 38-20?
All right. And guys, like I said last week, I'm picking the Rams until somebody shows me that they can beat them. I mean, their offense, third in the league. They're averaging nearly 35 points a game. Their defense is 6th, only allowing 19.6 points per game. 34.6 scoring, 19.6 giving up. A nice 15-point swing there. Jared Goff leads the league in passing yards, second only to Drew Brees in passer rating. You're welcome, Earl Parker, for the Drew Brees plug. I'd still take Pat Mahomes over him in a fantasy draft, but we'll talk more about that. But the Rams are doing too many good things, guys. And oh, by the way, Todd Gurley is second in the league in rushing yards and leads the league in rushing touchdowns with 7. So I'm sticking with it. I like the Rams with you guys. I think they win this game 38-24. Our fourth game this week are the 3-2 Ravens going to the 3-2 Titans, and the Ravens are a 2.5-point road favorite. Over/under is 41.5. Tony, who gets a W here?
It's going to be a tough game, man. I love the Titans' defense, but I also like the Ravens' offense. So I think it's going to be a close game, but I think the Ravens will pull it off. 27-23 Ravens.
Okay. Bob, who do you like?
I agree with Tony. I like Baltimore. They've actually given up less points than Tennessee. I mean, their differential is very good this year, and they're scoring points, and they seem to be in a decent place right now. I think they continue doing that. How about Baltimore 27-24? Quick and close one.
Okay. And guys, like you said, Bob, the Ravens defense right now is where you'd expect them to be. They're number 1 in average points allowed. They're only giving up 15.4 points per game. 5th in the league, in rushing yards allowed at 88.4. So playing very stingy defense. Now in Tennessee, on the opposite side, when you look at their offense, they're not scoring very many points. They're 29th in the league. They're only scoring 17.4 points per game. Now, Ravens can't run the ball, right? They're struggling there. They're under 100 yards rushing per game. And, what they've done is done it all, if you can believe this, with Joe Flacco as their quarterback. They're doing it through the air. He's averaging over 300 yards per game, and but the Titans defense is 3rd in the league, and passing yards allowed at 210. So I think this is going to be a fun battle. I think you got opposing things going at each other, but I see this as a field goal battle. And if it's a field goal battle, Justin Tucker is probably the best there is, and he's going to win that every time. So I think it's a little closer, a little lower scoring, but I'm taking the Ravens with you guys. I like them 18-12. We got our last game. We've got our next guest, Mark Carey, on the line. We're going to get to Mark in just a moment. Last game is the 5-0 Chiefs going to Tony's 3-2 Patriots on the Sunday night game. Patriots are a 3.5-point home favorite, and the over-under is 59.5. Tony, can your boys be the ones that stop Pat Mahomes?
Man, you know what? I would love to see Mahomes go undefeated for the whole season, but unfortunately, they're playing the Patriots at home, and unfortunately, we got Belichick and we got Brady. And it's going to be a high-scoring game, and I picked my Patriots 41-38, beating the
wow
41-38.
Okay, high-scoring affair. Bob, is he right?
I think he is right. In New England, and Tony knows the Sunday night, Monday night crowds, they're all going to be bammed up. It's going to be insane there. So, yeah, it's going to take away some of Kansas City's luster there, because this is there's kind of a rivalry here already, between these two teams, who can score more. But I just think the Patriots, and I'm not a fan of their defense, but they do play a little better defense than Kansas City does at this point. So, like Tony said, points will be scored. How about 35-31 New England?
Wow, and I'm almost right on top of that, Bob. I think you're right. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. I think, the Chase defense is allowing 343 yards passing per game. And now you're going to face Tom Brady and a guy who just got a new weapon in Josh Gordon, and they've had a week to kind of get on the same page with one another. Yeah, I'm taking the Patriots too. I had it 34-31 New England. Tony, before we let you go, remind our listeners about the great things you're doing helping kids go to college.
TonyCollinsFoundation.org. Go to the website, donate as much as you can, helping kids go off to college.
Great stuff as always, Tony. Thank you for your time tonight. We look forward to catching up with you again next week. In between now and then, my friend, all the best to you and your family.
Take care, Tony.
You guys have a great one. God bless, guys.
Good night.
See you, Tone. That is former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins and our 5-star picks of the week. We've got our next guest, Mark Carrier, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Mark on the other side of this quick station break.
Hear your favorite NFL legends sharing their stories and insights every week right here on Thursday Night Tailgate with Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazari. Take it away, guys.
Once the door is locked, there's no way out.
And now back with us here on Thursday Night Tailgate is former Chicago Bears Pro Bowl free safety Mark Carrier. Let me remind you about Mark's background. He is from Lake Charles, Louisiana. Attended high school at Long Beach Polytech in Long Beach, California, where he was a 3-year varsity starter and named Parade All-American and USA Today All-American in 1985. Played his college ball at USC, where he became USC's first winner of the Jim Thorpe Award, which is presented annually to the nation's best defensive back. He was inducted into the USC Athletic Hall of Fame in 2006 and was named to the Pac-12 All-Century Team. Fox Sports named Mark the 7th most dominating defender in USC history. He was a first-round draft pick, the 6th overall selection by the Bears in 1991, and one pick ahead of his teammate, Junior Seau. Mark played in the NFL from 1990 to 2000 for the Bears, Lions, and Redskins. He was named Defensive Rookie of the Year in 1990 when he led the league with 10 interceptions, which also set a Bears franchise record. He was named to the Pro Bowl 3 times in 1990, 91, and 93. His 32 career interceptions has him tied with safeties like Hall of Famer Kenny Easley and fellow USC alumni Troy Polamalu. After his playing days, he coached at Arizona State, plus with the Ravens, Jets, and Bengals. You can hear him now as he's a co-host on the Pac-12 network, and that we are honored very much that he is back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Mark, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Welcome back, Mark.
Hello, thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
So, Mark, I want to start by getting your thoughts on your USC Trojans. 3-2 so far on the season. They're coming off back-to-back wins over Arizona and Washington State, and prior to that, they had lost a couple to Stanford and Texas. They've got number 19 Colorado coming up Saturday. Give us your thoughts. How do you feel about the Trojans so far this season?
I'm kind of perplexed. I don't know who they are. When someone asked me this question a couple of weeks ago about the Trojans and what I think, I said I don't know what their identity. I just know from when you look at the great teams, you look at the Ohio State, the Alabamas, even heck, I even use the word Notre Dame, which I don't like to use around. They have an identity. You know who they are. You know what they do and how they do it well. With this USC team, going into the season, they thought their offensive line would be a key and their defense will hold on and allow this young quarterback JT Daniels to come along. Well, the kids played okay. What's not been good is their offensive line has struggled and their defense hasn't really shut anybody out. So I'm still trying to figure out who this team is.
So, Mark, taking that a step further, when you look around the rest of the Pac-12 and you get to see that up close and personal, how do you feel about the rest of the conference? Who do you think is playing in the Pac-12 conference title game?
Oh, that's good. Obviously, I'm guessing the winner of this weekend's Oregon and Washington game, probably for sure from the North, is my first is from the North, and not to say anything. I mean, SC should win out in the South, but the South is not looking all that. I mean, you look at UCLA. Trust me, I'm glad to see what they're doing. But you got to still play Arizona State. This game against Colorado was a big game. Utah. SC barely. The only reason they beat Washington State because they blocked a field goal. So you got to figure. I'm looking at possibly the winner of the Oregon Washington game and SC playing in the Pac-12 championship game.
Bob, questions for Mark?
Mark, it's always a pleasure to have you on, and welcome back. And Mark, I'm thinking about the old Soldier Field, and there's so many great stadiums out there that are mentioned. Usually you hear about Lambeau and baseball, of course, it's Yankees and Fenway. I just don't think Soldier Field gets the credit for being one of those real classic places that people have played in. I think it goes back to 1926. Every time that you walked in there, Mark, did you have that kind of historical feeling that I'm in a very special place?
Yeah, no question. Now, and again, I played in old Soldier Field, and so when you walk in there, I mean, at one point that stadium years ago, the old Soldier used to hold 100,000. I mean, that's how big that stadium was, and not taken away from this Soldier Field, which is a beautiful stadium. It doesn't have the same mystique as that you're talking about, Bob, like Packer, like Lambeau Field or like the Boston where at the Red Sox where they play their games at. It's not the same old Soldier Field. I mean, it's still a great place to play, but I think they did it justice, not keeping some of this the characteristic of that stadium close to what it used to be. It kind of looked like almost like a spaceship out of there. They still kept the pillars and everything, but that's it. But that's really the only remembrance of that. The stadium doesn't have that feel. Now, I could be wrong. I'm curious what other guys who played in it, the old stadium, doesn't have that feel of the old tradition Chicago Soldier Field Stadium to me.
And the first coach, Mark, you played with obviously was Ditka. That's a story in itself. But your first defensive coordinator, Vince Tobin, people remember him for having 5 average seasons as a head coach, but he was a very, very successful defensive coordinator both in Chicago, Arizona, and a few other places. Talk about his ability to coach the defensive side of the ball, Mark, and your relationship, what it was like with him.
Well, with Vince was one of the things I learned a lot from Vince was he was a very, very smart man, very cerebral. He's very low key. It's funny because you go from Buddy Ryan, who says and God rest his soul was out there and with that outgoing personality. Obviously, the players loved him, and then here comes Vince, who was more low key, kind of behind the scenes guy, but very smart. I mean, I think at one point. When Vince was there, they set the record for scoring defense. I mean, that's how good Vince was, in understanding X's and O's from a defense. And what I learned from Vince was was the bigger picture. It wasn't just my position, but how to see everybody else's position, how things work and how everybody works together. He showed me or tried to teach me again, not to just look at what I do, but to encompass everybody else around me and make sure they're doing what they're doing and how it all works together. There's no one guy. I mean, if you have a dominant guy like a Richard Dent or Mike Singletary or Hampton or somebody, obviously that makes everything better, but it's still a team effort and you need a group, you need a whole group, filling in to be successful. And Vince kind of taught me that of understanding the whole picture of the defense.
Mark, want to get your thoughts on the Bears for this season. They may be the surprise team in the league so far. 3-1, leading the NFC North division. Is this a team you think can actually make a run in the playoffs?
You know what? Going into the season, I thought they would be better. I mean, Trubisky would have another year. Defense would be. I thought they would be better. I didn't think they would be. I didn't think they would come out of the North or Central, excuse me. But when they got Khalil Mack, when you get a game changer on offense or defense, you can just see in that short time how that one guy reverberates around the whole group, and what that one guy, when you got somebody who's a once in a lifetime game player like that steps into to that team, you can see what his ability has. I mean, you saw what he's done, and you can see what had happened to the Raiders, him taken away from the Raiders, and see what he's done with the Bears. And again, the growth of Trubisky in 1 year, which I was questioning the guy, only 14 starts. That's just a tough deal to come in college and all of a sudden be a pro quarterback, but they've done Nagy's done a good job of bringing him along. But you can't underestimate the presence of Khalil Mack and what he's done, and put this team, in that position where they got a chance to win the division and if Trubisky keeps growing and keep improving like he has been, they're going to have a chance to get into the playoffs and make a run.
And to take that a step further, Mark, when you look at Trubisky, right, he's coming off the best game of his career last week a couple weeks ago against the Bucs, where he threw for 354 yards, 6 touchdowns. He's completing 70% of his passes this season. You talk about, them bringing him along and growth. What have you seen? What have you seen out of him that looks like he is starting to actually mature into a guy who really could be a franchise quarterback?
Well, you kind of hit on it when you talk about completing 70% of his passes. It's his decision making. He's making smart decisions. I mean, with young quarterbacks, you never know. Sometimes they always think they're just going to get it and throw it down the field and complete every pass. But what they've done with him and what their offense has done, and Mark Helfrich, who's the offensive coordinator, who used to be the head coach at Oregon, who I worked with at Arizona State, is a very good. He doesn't get enough credit on how well he's done with Trubisky and how well he's worked with him, of just getting him, keeping him focused on what he needs to do and put him in position for him to be successful. When you draft these young quarterbacks, if you want to give them to play, well, put him in positions that he can be successful. One, good talent around him. Two, highlight his positives so he can have a chance to be successful. And that's what this team's done. And so what Trubisky's doing, he's taking what the defense gets to him, and he's showing his strong arm, and he can make all the throws. And biggest thing I see is, the two things I see is, one is he's making smart decisions, and they're not turning the ball over. And that goes a long way.
And Mark, last week we had former defensive back Toy Cook on the show, and Toy talked a lot about how passing and receiving numbers need an asterisk now because defenses can't hit a quarterback almost at all, and wide receivers no longer have a fear about going across the middle because if you hit a wide receiver hard, regardless if it was helmet to helmet or not, immediately the flag is going to come out because there's the perception of it must have been helmet to helmet. So, of course, passing and receiving yards are going to go up. What are your thoughts about where the game is at right now?
Well, it's like anything else. You're talking about a guy who was suspended 3 times for hits, but never flagged on the play. So it's always after fact. The game evolves and it changes, and you have to change with it. It's not going backwards; it's going forward. So we have to adjust. But I think Toy is right, even though he's a Stanford guy. He's just trying to show his intelligence there. But the game has changed, and you have to adapt to it, and it's becoming more wide open, more spread. And the NFL want to keep these quarterbacks on the field because they're the ones who sell the tickets, and so they want to make sure. And injuries is part of it. Let's not be coy about it. Safety is also a big reason, but it's also keeping the highest paid player on the field more all the time to generate offense, because that's what the audience wants to see. But it is a difference. There's guys in the Hall of Fame would have to adjust their game totally, but those were the rules that they played under that, and that's how it is. And great players will make adjustments to what the games are, what the rules are today. That's just a fact of life. And it hurts me a little bit to see some of the softness in it. They may make the game, but that's how it is, and that's what it evolved to. So you got to always adjust to it.
Bob, more for Mark?
And Mark, you when you got into the league, you were able to play on the same defensive side of the ball as Ron Rivera. He had already had a very successful linebacking career when you arrived there. Did you have any inkling? I know when I watched him, had no inkling that he might get into coaching or be as successful as he has been.
Oh, Chico, if you ask me, Mark, who was some of the most influential people on you when you got into the league that helped you? Chico would be the number one guy. He was so smart. He is so patient with me and helped teach me how to play, help me learn the defense, learn how to get assimilated to professional livelihood. So the fact that he's a successful coach, it doesn't surprise me at all because I know how he was with me and how he helped me along and how he helped me understand and learn the 46 defense and different ways to work within the structure of it, but more importantly, how to be a pro. I think that can't be said enough that he helped me learn, help teach me how to be a pro in this league and be successful and be a very good teammate. His wife, Stephanie, was a great person too. It was a great athlete in her own right, are just good people. And I can't say enough about how Ron was great for me in my career and helped me become a better player.
And Mark, we've also been fortunate enough on this program to speak with Mike Singletary, who you also played with, Hall of Famer, obviously, legendary. And I was just wondering, was he that type of leader on defense, Mark, that was more of a rah-rah guy, or was he one of more just kind of led by example because of the talent that he had?
Oh no, when your leader like Mike Singletary does it all. There's some guys, like you said, are rah-rah guys, or some guys who do by example. When you're somebody as great as Singletary, you do it by both and then some. You don't just, you know when to be the rah-rah guy, but you also know when it's time to lead by example. But it's also in times when you take a guy to the side and talk with them and show, hey, try to just be a friend or a teammate, or there's so many aspects of it just to be a leader, not just the two things you said. He was a lot. I mean, he helped me. He taught me how to call the defense. He taught me how to get the guys, the players to learn how to get them that can win their trust over what needed to be done. He got on me when I needed to. He was like a big brother to me, and he was also one who put his arm around when he thought I needed that. So Mike was just more than just an average. He was a great leader. He was a great leader of men. Not just because he did it by example, not because he was just a rah-rah guy. It's just because he was the person he was and all he incumbent. He knew when to say the right things, when to do the right things, and how to do it. And the most important about leadership is being consistent, and he was consistent about it. He never put himself out there. He put himself out there as hard as anybody else. So it wasn't like he was throwing you out there. He would be out there first. He put his name out there first and expect you to follow, but he would also be the one who'll give you all the praise before he give himself the credit. So he was just more than just what you term a leader. He was just a great person.
Mark, I don't know if enough people outside of the Midwest really grasp how deep the rivalry is between the Packers and the Bears. Was there extra juice for you guys when it was Packers week?
Oh, God, yeah. I remember Keith Van Horn, who, played offensive tackle for the Bears and was an SC guy. And I remember we were getting ready to play the Packers, and he came up in Green Bay in Lambeau, and he came up to me. He said, to try to give me an understanding of what this game was about, he said, hey, this game is like playing against UCLA and Notre Dame, but magnified 10 times. That's how heated this rival is. And it was. And even today, heck, I joke, my in-laws still live right in very north side of Chicago. Matter of fact, like 30 minutes from the border of Wisconsin. And I always joke about when I go visit them, like, hey, if we're going to go somewhere, we're not going to the state of Wisconsin. I don't want to be anywhere near the state of Wisconsin. And I think and also I don't think they allow me in the state of Wisconsin anymore. But that rival, yeah, because it's been going on for so long and so heated. Obviously, it doesn't get the notoriety as some other big rivalries in today and age because both teams, aren't always. One's usually up or one's usually down. Haven't they been where they've both been high in a while? So that kind of takes away from the luster. But trust me, it's serious, and because these people, the fans, take it very serious.
Mark, before we let you go, remind our listeners what you're doing now and how they can stay up to date with all the great things you're doing, whether it's online or it's on social media.
Oh, okay. Well, I work with Sports USA, and matter of fact, I sub in and do some broadcasting. I did the broadcast game. I did the Packers-Vikings game and went to a tie in overtime. I was actually doing that on national radio. I'm getting ready to do coming up the Nebraska-Ohio State game for Sports USA. Actually, right now, I'm actually in Champaign, Illinois. My lovely daughter plays soccer for the University of Illinois, and they're playing Purdue tonight. So I'm actually hanging out at that game tonight. So when I'm not working radio and filling in, I'm being a rooting dad for my daughter who plays soccer for University of Illinois.
That's fantastic. Good luck to her tonight. And we can't thank you enough, Mark, for taking time out of your busy schedule to come back and join us. You're always so fantastic. We enjoy having you on so much. We hope you'll come back and do it again a little bit later on in the season and give us more of your thoughts and your insights. You're fantastic.
Oh, my pleasure. You guys are great. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you, Mark.
Take care, Mark. All the best to you and your family.
Oh, okay, you too. Thank you.
Take care, Mark. That is former Pro Bowl free safety Mark Carrier. Bob, love having Mark as part of the show. So insightful and always so much fun when he's a part of the segment.
It is, Chris. And talking to the guys he played with, you get goosebumps. The ones that I mentioned, I didn't even bring up, guys like Richard Dent and the Fridge and all those other guys. What memories of Soldier Field and the weather and et cetera. It's just such a great time when we speak with those old guys from the black and blue division.
All right, coming up here in hour number 2, we're going to be joined by Levon Kirkland and Burt Grossman. But before Levon joins us, I want to give a shout-out to our friends over at the Gridiron Greats organization. Folks, please support a wonderful cause that's taking care of the guys who let so much of themselves out on the field. These are the guys who played back when they still had to get off-season jobs to support themselves and their families. It's organizations like this one that was started by Mike Ditka, again, called the Gridiron Greats, who are out there trying to help the guys we all grew up watching and reading about. Please go online to gridirongreats.org to see what you can do to get involved. All right, now back with us and making his 10th appearance here on Thursday Night Tailgate is former Steelers Pro Bowl linebacker Levon Kirkland. Let me remind you about Levon's background. He is from Lamar, South Carolina, played his college ball at Clemson, where he was a consensus All-American in 1991. He is also a member of their All-Century team and was inducted into their Hall of Fame back in 2001. He was also inducted into the state of South Carolina's Athletic Hall of Fame in 2008. He was a second-round draft pick in 1992 by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he played in the NFL from 92 to 2002. All but 2 of those seasons were in Pittsburgh. He spent 1 year each in Seattle and Philadelphia. He was selected to the Pro Bowl in back-to-back years in 1996 and 97. He was the Steelers team MVP in 98 and 99, and he was also named to the NFL's All-Decade team for the 1990s. Last year, he was inducted into the South Carolina Football Hall of Fame, and he has more recently been coaching, spent some time as a defensive coordinator at Florida A&M, also doing some internships with teams around the league like the Cardinals and the Bengals. And as many of you know, Levon was guest number 1 here back in September of 2011, and he is a member of our Guest Hall of Fame. And his generosity with his time over the years has been outstanding, and we are thrilled he is back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Levon, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Welcome back.
Thank you guys for having me. It's always a pleasure.
So, Levon, I want to start off our time with you tonight by getting your thoughts on the Steelers' defense. It's been a struggle at times this season. It looked a little bit better this last Sunday against the Falcons, but what's your assessment of the Steelers' defense so far?
Well, in the first several games, if you look at it, it didn't seem to be out of sync. And sometimes that happens with a defense where you're not always on the same page. One guy's here, one guy's there. And you got to realize that, it's probably not the same defense, even though Buck has been a defense coordinator for a couple years. Sometimes things don't gel as well as they should. I'm not going to say that the players are not up to par, but it just seems like they're just not in sync. And sometimes that's, the 3-4 concept, it can be difficult when everybody's not in the right position. And I think really that's what you saw the first 4 games. This last game, they seem to be on point to get some pressure on the quarterback. That's not the issue, but they do seem to give up a lot of yards in the passing. For whatever reason that is, they seem to give a lot of yards up that way, and I'm not quite sure if that middle is as good as it was. You know, with Shazier not being there and having that anchor, back there in the linebacker core, I think it's a little tough for him. So, you can see the struggles, but, last game, you did see some improvement, and hopefully you can build from that.
And Levon, to your point a moment ago about the middle, right? The defense has struggled, particularly covering tight ends. Even last week, Austin Cooper had 9 catches for 77 yards. And you did such a great job covering the tight ends down the seam. What made you so successful at it, and where do you see that the Steelers need to improve to handle covering tight ends going forward?
Right. I think one of the things that helped me out a lot was I had great guys who were really good at jam on the tight end. You talk about Kevin and Greg and also Jason Gilden. Those guys always did a good job of jamming that guy. It gave me a little time to read what was going on. And, I was really patient as far as a pass cover linebacker was concerned. I understood my coverages, what I could give a guy, what I allow a guy to do. I always did a good job of dictating where I wanted him to go. I always made sure my position was forcing that guy to go in the direction that I wanted him to go in. I knew this about defense, I knew this about covering. They knew exactly where they were going to go. And I didn't. I just kind of understood that I had to react. Doing that, I made sure I didn't give them a two-way go. I made sure, like I said before, I made them go the way I wanted them to go. So that was really my key to playing defense.
And Levon, you mentioned Jason Gilden a moment ago, and we all know, what a great linebacking core you had. You mentioned Greg and Chad Brown and Kevin Green, but I think a guy who gets overlooked a lot is Jason Gilden. Talk about playing alongside of him.
Actually, I thought Jason was, in my opinion, probably the best overall linebacker that I played with. Kevin and Greg were great as far as getting off the edge and, making big plays. Greg especially was explosive, but I'm telling you, I saw Jason last weekend, and I told him the same thing. I thought he was a very underrated linebacker. In our scheme of things. He did everything well. He played over the tight end well. He played the mud well. And a lot of people don't know, it's a trivia question, that he leads all our linebackers in sack. Most people would think that would be Kevin Green, but that's Jason Gilden. And he did such a wonderful job. And the great thing about Jason and myself, we were just so in sync. I kind of had a feeling what he was going to do, and it really worked out for us. So Jason Gilden is probably one of the best linebackers that a lot of people don't know about.
5 questions for Levon?
It's always great to have you on the show, Levon, and I hope you're doing well. And I'm going to take it back to your rookie year in '92. You didn't start any games, but you got in every game, Levon, and something I mentioned at the beginning of the show, you playing in basically every game you ever showed up. But that year where you're looking on at the sidelines when the game starts, you're watching this great defense, you're learning. Is there a fine line between you learning and the desire to just want to get out there? I mean, were you totally ready, do you think, for the NFL during that rookie year?
I thought that I wasn't quite ready, and you have to understand my situation. I played outside linebacker, a little defensive end at Clemson, so I never played inside linebacker. And what that year allowed me to do was get some, it gave me a learning curve. It gave me a little bit of buffer time to understand the position, because I wasn't that instinctive at first. And so not playing that year, playing on the scout team, watching those guys on film really kind of gave me a year of learning, which I really did appreciate because I wasn't quite there yet. Had the ability to play the position, but wasn't really as savvy as I needed to be. It really took me about, I played well when I started, but it took me really about 3 to 4 years to really get the instinct, to really get a great feel about it. And, so I appreciate my time, on the sideline, which a lot of guys don't want to do, but it was a part of my process of understanding that I didn't know the position quite as well, and it was going to take me some time. So, I didn't mind it, but I didn't, the next year I was going to start. I had my mind made up that I was going to be a starter, so it worked out for me.
And Levon, I asked Greg Lloyd recently about what probably my favorite Steeler of all time, Rod Woodson, and obviously you had him as a teammate on that defense. To me, again, his speed was legendary. He was an incredible return man, a great defensive player, and for what we gather, an incredible person. But your memories of him as a teammate?
Well, I think Rod was he was probably the best defensive player that I've ever played with. Tremendous all-around corner. A guy that didn't mind mixing it up a little bit as far as tackling concerned. A tall, big corner, had great speed, was a playmaker. Just knew how to make plays and was extremely smart back there. He understood the game as well as anybody that I knew that understood the game. He just really made it easy for the rest of us to play because he knew that Rob was going to make a play at some point in time in the game. And it was going to be a big play that kind of turned things around. And I remember when he won the Defensive Player of the Year, and this guy made big play after big play after big play. It was amazing. But, the thing also that I gathered from Rod was he was a very hard worker and probably one of the hardest workers on our team. And fortunately for me, we had a bunch of hard workers. So it was really cool to be around, really cool to have that standard. So Rod he was a standard setter. I mean, if he didn't play up to his level, what he thought you should play to, he was vocal enough to tell you about it. But it was a pleasure. As I look back, I realized how honor it was to play with someone like Rod Woodson. So fond memories there. Made a lot of big plays. I was happy to be on the field with him.
Levon, you averaged making over 100 tackles per season for a decade. So years later, how's the body feeling? How do you feel years removed from that after being such a big part of making the tackles on that Steelers defense?
Well, my shoulders are really taking a toll, but for the most part, I didn't get hurt. No knee issues, no back issues. Just I think because it was such a tighter game back then, where a lot of running in between the tackles, a lot of leads, a lot of isolations. The 3-4, we took on a lot of the guards. So really, the only issues that I have are shoulder issues, but they're not devastating issues. So for the most part, I was really blessed to be pretty healthy throughout my 11-season career.
And Levon, looking back over that career, is there a game that you still, enjoy thinking back on and makes you smile to this day? And is there one that still bothers you?
Yeah. The one that bothers me is probably the Super Bowl 30. I did play a pretty good game, but there was one play that if I would have made that play, I think it would have changed the game around. It was just a slant play that had, 3 on one side, and I didn't push over to number 2. If I would have pushed to number 2 and they kind of had full flow, I probably could have made that interception and probably scored that game, which nobody probably knew about because the next play, I made a big-time tackle, and then the next play I made a sack. So, but that play kind of bothers me a little bit. I kind of replay that play. The other game that I really enjoyed, it was a Monday night game. We played the Buffalo Bills. I had 2 interceptions, but the first interception was a great play on my part, but it was kind of a fluke play because me and Chad Brown were supposed to double team that guy, but Chad kind of let him go, and I had to really kind of run him down. And when he put his arms up to catch, I just kind of reached up, and the ball kind of stuck within my forearms, and I just kind of gathered it in. It kind of looked like a Willie Mays play. But that game, I think that game kind of got people to notice me not only as a run stopper, but that I was really good at coverage too. So that was a game I think people kind of took a lot more notice because it was pretty hard to get a lot of fame on that team because we had so many good defensive players. So it was that game that I think that was a game that I really cherish a whole lot.
Bob, more for Levon?
And Levon, you retired in 2002. You had played a totally full season with Philadelphia, still playing at a pretty high level. Did you go out on your own terms, Levon? Did you think you could come back for at least 1 or 2 more seasons?
Actually, I went out on my own terms. I think it comes down to I only had 1-year contract with them, and you just never know. I mean, I knew. Well, I go back. I knew that I wasn't the same player. I thought I was still pretty good, and I was decent, but I didn't feel like I was up to my level of playing. I got to a point where I was just kind of tired of the meetings, tired of the training camps, it wasn't really in me. And I felt like if I wasn't going to be passionate enough about it, or if I didn't care like I did before, it was time to go. And, actually, Philly wanted me to come back. They wanted me in a different role, and, Jacksonville called later on and wanted me back. But by that time, I was just really finished with playing the game. And I think, I was fortunate enough that I didn't have to, get out the game or force out the game. I kind of left on my own terms. But I felt like I wasn't the player that I was. And, I could have went back another year and just kind of went through the motions, but I took a lot of pride in what I did. I just didn't want to go out there and be a player that I wasn't happy with. So I felt like that was where I was headed.
And at that point, Levon, after playing football for probably 20 years, the switch over to civilian life, was it very tough for you at the beginning?
Yeah, it was an adjustment. I mean, it wasn't, a financial thing or anything like that, but it was definitely, it was an adjustment. I think everybody goes through that adjustment. What are you going to do next? I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to coach. In ways I wanted to get away from football. I just had, me and my wife just had our first, our only daughter, our one and only child. So, it was tough. It really was. I think no matter what happens, it's still going to be a tough, transition. It really is. So, it was tough for me, just like it's tough for probably a whole lot of guys. No matter, if you have a CBS job waiting for you or whatever you do, it's still tough because you've been accustomed to doing things in a certain way, in a certain structure, and now that structure is gone, and now you're kind of making decisions on your own and what to do, where to go, and it was foreign to me at first. It really was.
Levon, just a couple of more before we let you go, and got to get your thoughts on your alma mater, Clemson. They're right back where they've been the last several years, undefeated, near the top of the rankings. They've got 20th ranked NC State this weekend. So give us your thoughts on Clemson, and is anything short of another championship game appearance a disappointment now?
You know, I think it is. I think that they're playing pretty well. I don't think they've clicked yet. I think they're a team that is on the cusp of doing some really good stuff. I mean, their offense, they got 3 running backs, or really 4 running backs that are tremendous. The Trevor Lawrence quarterback, I think what he gives us is a vertical game. And as a defensive player, if a team can go vertical, they're dangerous, especially a college team. And they got the capabilities with the quarterback they got now and the receivers they got, that he can drive them down the field. And he's making the team a lot more versatile and a lot more vertical, which a lot of people may not understand what that does to a defense. When you can throw the ball vertical and you can run the ball vertical, it gives the defense fits. So, and I think their defense is pretty good, especially their defensive line. They're real good. They still, I think, this is just my opinion, I think they blitz a little too much. I think when you have a really good front and you got good linebackers, you don't really need to blitz as much. The 4 guys they got, you can really play straight up, and you don't give people holes and give people avenues. So, I think that, I think they're a good team. I think that, if they get a chance to get in the playoffs, anything can happen in the playoffs. It's all about matchups. So, they're going in the right direction. They're still not quite there, but, I think Trevor Lawrence will get better as he continues to play, and, they got some good weapons around them. So they're going to be good. They're going to be real good. They're going to be in the hunt.
Levon, before we let you go, remind our listeners, how can they stay up to date with all the things that you're doing, whether they're doing it online or it's on social media?
Well, social media, I got 2 pages. I got my personal page, Levon Kirkland, and I got a coaching page too, which I highlight a lot of the things I do as far as football camps are concerned. And I work with Adidas and also Rivals, really helping kids and prepare them for that next level. You can also hit me up on Twitter, which is 44_Kirkland. So that's how you can catch up with me on social media.
Well, Levon, we can't thank you enough for continuing to being such an outstanding guest with us here on the show and being generous with your time. We appreciate you so very much. Thanks again for coming back and joining Bob and I again tonight.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Levon.
Take care, Levon. All the best to you and your family. We'll catch up again soon.
All right. Thank you.
Good night.
That is former Clemson and Steelers Pro Bowl linebacker Levon Kirkland, and just a guy, Bob, that we treasure. Again, going all the way back. Guest number 1 on show number 1 in September of 2011, and continuing to come back and be a part of the show. He's certainly a huge treasure to us.
Such a devoted guy to the show, like we mentioned, and what a great player, Chris. And he's just a pleasant man to talk to, very laid back, but as you remember, ferocious on the gridiron.
We've got our next guest, Burt Grossman, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Burt on the other side of this quick station break.
Hear your favorite NFL legends sharing their stories and insights every week right here on Thursday Night Tailgate with Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazari. Take it away, guys.
Locked. There's no way out.
Now back in making his 4th appearance with us here on Thursday Night Tailgate is former Pitt and Chargers defensive end Burt Grossman. Let me remind you a little bit more about Burt's background. He's from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, played his college ball at the University of Pittsburgh. He was a first-round draft choice, the 8th overall selection by the San Diego Chargers in 1989. Played in the NFL from 1989 to 1994 for the Chargers and the Eagles before a neck injury prematurely ended his career. Over the course of that time, he had 276 tackles, 43.5 sacks, recorded 3 safeties, and he forced 3 fumbles. After his playing days, he worked in Philadelphia on a radio show titled Eagles Hour, which he won an Emmy for Best Sports Reporting back in 1995. In 96, he published a book titled The Way Things Ought to Be. In 2011, he was selected as the NFL Teacher of the Year for the impact he had on his students' educational and life skills development. He's become a wonderful friend of the show, and we are so glad he is back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Burt, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you for having me. I always love coming on this show.
So, Burt, I got to get your thoughts on the Pitt Panthers. You know I'm from Pittsburgh, and always pulling for Pitt to do well. But 3-3 so far this season. Are you seeing any signs that this program is going to get back to where it used to be back in the 70s and 80s?
I don't think that program will ever get back to the 70s, 80s, and it was such good times for Pitt, and I kind of got to Pitt at the tail end of the 80s 85, but when it was just off that, and everybody just thought it was, a coach or a quarterback away, and when's the next damn Reno going to come? It's been 40 years and we haven't had one, but, it's hard now. I think ever since they moved the stadium out of Oakland, it's just not a college atmosphere anymore. It's just hard for city schools to get that good, and Penn State has continued to roll, and the Big 12 now is recruiting, and they're not getting the recruits they used to get. West Virginia's on top again, Syracuse is up and coming, so I don't see in the foreseeable future. I thought Narduzzi was going to be a great hire, but they've kind of regressed since the Wannstedt era to me. I mean, Paul Chryst was there and everybody complained about him, but Narduzzi's best year was with his guys his first year, and it's gone backwards ever since. I don't know. I didn't like the move to the ACC. Didn't like the stadium. I mean, there's been, Todd Graham. There's been some bad coaching hires. I don't know if they can ever get out of it, to be honest with you. It's been so long.
And to the point you just made, Burt, about the move to the ACC and you not liking it, a lot of people have started to point the finger that was a bad move for Pitt to leave the Big East and to join the ACC. Why do you think it was a bad move?
I mean, at the time, I could see at the time because basketball was Jamie Dixon was there and they were a perennial top 10 or even top 5 team at the time, top 20. They were coming off Wannstedt, who has, was winning 10 games or so, and it seemed like a good idea and they can compete, but I think what they didn't realize was you're going to have to start recruiting against those teams that, traditionally you didn't have to. That became the problem, really. They just don't get 4-star. I mean, Pitt always got 4 or 5-star recruits. You never saw Pitt outside of the top 5 or 10 in recruiting, even into 2000 almost. They always had 4 or 5-star kids. I don't know the last 4 or 5-star kid they had, maybe Jordan Whitehead, but they don't get those kids anymore, and those kids want to go to Clemson. And if you go to Clemson or you go to Florida State or you go to Miami and then you go to Pitt and it's like, oh, we got to bus to the stadium to practice. We got to share a facility with a pro team. We got to bus there. It's just not a college atmosphere, and that's what kids that age want. They want that atmosphere. I mean, you saw the atmosphere of Penn State at a whiteout night as compared to, it raining at Syracuse with 10,000 people in the stands. Where would you go?
And to the end about Penn State, right? One of the things that I sort of scratched my head about, Burt, is when Penn State was going through all their tribulations, during and after the Sandusky-related issues, and the program sort of took it downhill for a couple of seasons, but they were able to recover, right? And they're back to, being an 11-win season, back-to-back 11-win seasons, the number 8 in the country right now. It seemed like Pitt had an opportunity to perhaps seize on some of that when maybe kids weren't as eager to go to Penn State as they had been historically. But it seemed like that came and went, and Pitt didn't get anything out of it, and Penn State bounced right back.
And they didn't capitalize on it, and I think, when I grew up in Pennsylvania, and you either went to Pitt or you went to Penn State if you were a top recruit in Pennsylvania. It was really no discussion. Notre Dame always got kids, and West Virginia might pull 1 or 2, but it was always, and we battled back and forth with recruits, and we all knew each other. But, with the internet and with more TV contracts and people start to see that atmosphere, I just think as a player, if think you're a big-time player in high school, and I watch a Penn State game and I watch a Pitt game, I don't know if I'd go to Pitt now, to be honest with you. But the reason I went was, I grew up in the city, and when Penn State was just too country for me, and so was West Virginia, and so were some of these other places. Pitt was home to me because it was a city. But again, the stadium was on campus. It was all encapsulated, and you had that campus feel. It is totally gone now. I mean, you're at Pro Stadium, you take a bus to practice. That's just, you're taking away the one experience that
kids like the most. I mean, that whole atmosphere. And again, I hate to keep bringing it up, but if you watch a Alabama game or an LSU game or you watch a Penn State game, why would you go anywhere else these days?
Bob, questions for Burt?
Great to speak with you again, Burt. And just a little bit about your East Coast upbringing, you know, from Philadelphia and playing at Pitt and then being drafted by San Diego. Burt, I think every guy we've spoken to, especially Ed White and a few others, had said that playing in San Diego is just ideal. Obviously, the conditions here, but you grew up here in the East Coast, Philadelphia, Pitt, etc. You see it all. Was that a big adjustment? And it probably was better for your game, if anything.
I think it was better for my game just because of the style of the AFC West. I mean, the conference was better because I was undersized and I was a pass rusher, and that's kind of what I did. You know, the honest thing was, growing up in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, it's like as soon as, you know, October hit and daylight savings, it was like you're in Alaska. So all you did was work out and football. The problem I had was I got here and it was like the ocean and there's skiing an hour away and there's LA and there's just so many options here that you lose focus, to be honest with you. I mean, I would go times where I wouldn't even work out the whole off season, where at Pitt or Philadelphia I didn't have a choice because it was too cold to go outside and we couldn't do anything else. But, you know, it's hard to get all that money and come from somewhere like Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was down then because of the steel industry and it was the mid-'80s and it was a depressing place. To come there and then to come to Southern California, especially San Diego, I mean, it's just like your senses are overwhelmed and football becomes like your last priority. And that's what I think hurt me the most, probably.
And Burt, your rookie year in '89, you played along guys like Gary Plummer and Leslie O'Neal, our good friend Vincey Glenn, and Billy Ray Smith. There were some good players on that team. Any of those guys I mentioned or someone else that kind of took you under their wing, made your transition to the NFL a bit easier?
Gary Plummer did a lot. You know, Leslie and I had a well-documented not like for each other, you know, playing opposite ends. So he never did. He'd do everything to sabotage me and vice versa. But Gary Plummer did from pretty much day one. I would go to his house and eat dinner. And Gary Plummer was a crazy workout guy, and I think they hoped that would catch on, but it never did. And then they drafted Junior and, you know, made Junior my roommate, which, you know, at the time I thought I was supposed to take him under my wing, but then I realized in hindsight, he's a workout crazy too, and I think they were hoping that he would have some effect on me, but neither one took. But yeah, I definitely did, but I think, you know, I had a different personality and didn't really take to any of that. Unfortunately, I wish I would have, you know, in hindsight, but when you're, you know, 20, 21 years old and you know, you come from a crazy background and you come from these crazy places, like it was crazy at that time. You're just your own person, and you just, you know, like I said, the senses of this town and the difference couldn't be more. Diego at the time, it was just overwhelming.
And Burt, sticking with your playing days in San Diego, your rookie year in 1989, that was the season that Christian Okoye had his breakout year for the Chiefs, rushed for nearly 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns. What do you remember about going up against the Nigerian Nightmare?
Oh, God. You know what? It was always, like you said earlier, it was nice to play in the AFC West till it was late in the season and you had to go to Kansas City. And then you knew they were just going to pound Christian Okoye the whole time. And he was probably 270 and I was probably 250. You know, he's a tailback and I'm a defensive end, but I always made a point to, like, tackle him from the side and, like, pretend like I was tripping just so I could, like, tackle his ankles, because he was one of those ones that just kill you. And I came from Pitt, who had Iron Head, and I think I was already broken down from tackling Iron Head every day at practice. So I learned my lesson at Pitt with Iron Head, and I learned how to do it and what not to do with big backs like that. So it was pretty much an angle deal. But he was just murder. And they had a good offensive line. So it was tough. And you knew they were going to throw the ball, and you knew it was cold. They had that old hard turf and the place was packed, but, you know, that was all. Kansas City was pretty much like a Pittsburgh experience, but we came from, you know, it's always 75 or 80, it's always sunny, it's always grass, there's always pretty girls in the stands, so we were kind of soft in that regard, I think, but we were more pass rushers. So, you know, teams like Kansas City we'd always have problems with, and even the Raiders. I don't know how they did it, but they had that East Coast mentality, even though they were on the West Coast. And
Burt, in '94, you left San Diego and you go up to Philadelphia. You joined the Eagles. And you must have endeared yourself to the fans there right away because you had a sack in each of the first 4 games that you played in. But we know that the Philly fans can be tough. What do you remember about your season up there playing for the Eagles?
You know, the fans are fine, mostly because I was born and raised in Philly, and you know, they always like their own no matter what you do. But I tore my hamstring actually in like the 3rd game. And I didn't really play much after that, to be honest with you. I mean, I started to play towards the end and I couldn't practice. But I mean, I love Philly in that aspect, but you know, it just changed because I've been here 5 years and it was just a different game. And the really big difference was you play your whole career in the AFC West at the time and you were rushing the passer. You play the run, but it wasn't NFC East at the time that had Emmitt Smith and the Cowboys and the Giants. You pound you. So it was a different adjustment. It was almost like I went to a totally different football league and they were playing totally different rules and you had to adjust. But I mean, I liked it, and the fans, I know they're notoriously bad. I mean, I remember, like, you know, dead cats being at the stadium because they used to let feral cats go at Veterans Stadium because they had a rat problem. We'd find, like, dead cats in the morning and just, you know, there was always fights there. They had the jail there. I mean, it was a crazy place, but for me, it wasn't that big a shock because I was born and raised there, so it was kind of what I was used to.
And Burt, just a couple more before we let you go. And you also went back and you played in Pittsburgh against the Steelers. In fact, your first 3 seasons, every year you seem to have a game against the Steelers in Pittsburgh, which sort of seems odd. But you had a sack in each one of those first few games. So did you have a little extra juice going back to Pittsburgh and playing in Three Rivers?
Not really. And to be totally honest with you, Pittsburgh wasn't good at that time, and that was more of it. You know, my 4th, 5th year, I think my 4th year my 5th year is when I tore my shoulder, my labrum in my shoulder, and I had to go on injured reserve and didn't finish the year, so I only played half that year, but I did in Pittsburgh. But towards the end of my career, Pittsburgh was, you know, Bill Cowher was coming in. They ended up going to the Super Bowl and winning in the Super Bowl. So it was more the fact that they just weren't that good, to be honest with you, at the time. But, you know, early in my career, but towards the end of my career, as short as it was with my injury, they were turning it around under Cowher, and it wasn't happening anymore. They were that much better.
And Burt, going back to when you were drafted, you were the 8th overall selection in '89. The Steelers actually had the 7th pick, and they took Tim Worley with that pick. Was there ever a little, you know, hey, why didn't you guys come and get me? I was sitting right there for you.
You know what? There's a lot of, you know, weird things at the time about the Steelers wouldn't take any Pitt guys. You know, it notoriously started when they passed on Dan Marino. But you look at, like, you know, Dolman. I mean, a lot of people came out of Pitt that it wouldn't take. And the funny part was they took Tom Ricketts because they had 2 picks in the first round that year. They took Tom Ricketts, who was a tackle out of Pitt, in the first round, and a later pick than mine. But he never ended up playing it down and ended up being a bust. And I don't think they've taken another Pitt guy since. But you know what? I don't know if I would have wanted to go to Pitt at the time or the Steelers. I had visited San Diego, and it was just a culture shock to me, and I was like, I'm moving out there, whether they take me or not. That's where I'm going to live. So they ended up taking me. But, I mean, I absolutely love Pittsburgh, and to be honest with you, I would go back to Pittsburgh. I was the number 1 defense line in the country coming out of high school. I would go back to Pittsburgh 100 times over just because I loved Pitt that much, and it was just great. I mean, I would never change that decision, but to stay on and go in Pittsburgh, it was a weird time. It was when, like, Terry Long was, you know, doing the drugs, and Carl Hasselrig was doing the drugs, and Mike Webster was coming unraveled, and it was just a weird time at Pitt those first few years, right when I was ending at the University of Pittsburgh. It was just a weird time and a weird vibe there, and I wasn't really into it, and they weren't into Pitt guys, and then Cowher came and changed the whole culture, and then they became, you know, the Steelers kids.
Burt, before we let you go, remind our listeners how they can stay up to date with the great things that you're doing now, whether it's online or it's on social media.
Well, mostly Twitter, which would be Burt, BURT_Grossman. That's pretty much it. I do mostly Twitter during the football season, and then, you know, Facebook like everybody else because I'm old. But mostly Twitter.
Well, Burt, thanks for taking time out of your night to come back on the show. You're always fantastic. We always have so much fun when you join us. We hope you'll come back again and join us again real soon.
Absolutely. Anytime. Anytime you say, I'll be back.
Thanks, Bert.
We appreciate you, Bert.
All right.
Take care. All the best to you and your family, my friend.
Thank you.
Take care.
That is former Pitt and San Diego Chargers, and obviously Eagles there the last season of his career, defensive end Burt Grossman. And what a great guy, Bob. I always enjoy having Burt as part of the show.
Yeah, again, it tells it like it is, Chris, big time. It's just, and again, people forget how good a defensive end he was. 20 sacks in his first 2 years. That's insane. Just very sad to me that he had to hang up the cleats very early, because God only knows what kind of defensive end he would have been, Chris, and how many sacks he would have put up as he was out of football at a very young age.
All right, when Bob and I come back, we'll be turning on our Thursday night tailgate spotlight on the positive, hear which players are doing great things in their communities, and then we'll wrap up the show, and we're going to do that all on the other side of these words about our good friend Dan Pastorini and DP Quality Foods.
Most folks are familiar with Dan Pastorini's accomplishments on the football field or in race cars. But what most don't know? Dan's family background in the restaurant business. For 37 years, Dan's parents, Dante and Dorothy, owned and operated Pastorini's Longhorn Restaurant. So the Pastorini family has a long history of making great tasting food from family recipes. Dan and his partners want to bring some of that to you with their Texas-style rub, Texas-style hickory rub, and their garlic and herb seasoning. First introduced back in 2011, Dan's Texas-style rub immediately began winning awards, taking home the first-place trophy for Best Ribs at the Pasadena Livestock Show and Barbecue Cook-Off. They did it again at the 2012 Texas Ranger Wounded Warrior Cook-Off, and the awards just keep on coming. Check out Dan's line of spices online at dpqualityfoods.com. That's dpqualityfoods.com. And take what you put on the grill to a whole new level.
Thursday Night Tailgate, where the spotlight is always on the positive. Tune in Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time to hear your favorite NFL legends, players, and coaches sharing their stories. Now back to Chris and Bob.
I wouldn't joke about anything else that happens here tonight.
Hey, we're back here on Thursday Night Tailgate, and we're turning on our spotlight on the positive. Bob, who are you spotlighting for us this week?
Chris, I have to give a shout-out to the entire San Diego Chargers organization. I'm going to put it specifically on guys like, defensive back Casey Hayward, and, of course, the former great Charger, LaDainian Tomlinson. I was reading this story, Chris, this week. These two guys, of course, it's October, and that's the Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And, you know, having lost my mom to it, I'm always keeping my eyes on these great stories like this. And, of course, the NFL is very big into it with this Crucial Catch initiative. But the Chargers this week was really cool. Chris, they actually Tomlinson and Hayward actually got together. And they actually went to they had this event going on for breast cancer survivors and gals that were still fighting it. And they actually sat down with these girls. They had a painting class at the Hogue Family Center. This is out there in San Diego. And it taught how these girls, how to actually paint portraits, things like that. It's great. There's pictures at the website. They actually showed everyone how to draw a pink helmet with the breast cancer logo on it, and they actually had a banner in the background, and on that banner you could write in paint anything you want, like go fight or warrior, whatever you wanted to do. But there's pictures of LT, this is a Hall of Famer, Chris. I mean, for him to show up like that at an event like this, and without any fanfare at all, sitting with these women and painting, and again, you got to look at the pictures, Chris. It's awesome how many people were painting and showed up. But Hayward just basically said, he says, I think it's very important to get your mind off of it, because most of the time, probably 95% of the time, you're thinking about it. You're going through treatments, and et cetera. He said it was my job to sit down with these ladies and get their mind off it and do whatever I could to help them. And again, this is what these guys do on their days off. And ironically, Susie Spanos, the survivor, she's been a survivor. Of course, she just lost her husband, but she's very dear to that cause. And probably that's why this came off this week. But, yeah, I got to give a shout-out to the entire Chargers organization because they're all clued in on it. But those two guys, Casey Hayward and the great LT, for what they did for these women fighting the disease, it really it tore at my heartstrings this week.
And I'll tell you what, Bob, that's a great story. And I'm going to stay in almost the exact same vein for my spotlight on the positive because I'm putting it on the local Atlanta Falcons, who always do such a great job honoring and taking care of some of the local women who are either breast cancer survivors or going through treatment as well. Same sort of thing. And this year, no different. With it being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, the Falcons treated 10 survivors, and again, also some ladies who are dealing with the disease, to a pamper night, right? A whole day of being pampering, and then a dinner that night with some of the players. They call it the Dazzle and Dinner night, and they give the ladies, a day that some of them said, look, these are things that little girls dream about, what we got to live today. It was a full day of pampering, from makeup to hairstyling, or if they were wearing a wig, getting their wig styled, to champagne and new clothes, and then, like I say, dinner with the players afterwards. One of the ladies that was chosen, she's a breast cancer survivor, but she lost her husband earlier this year to cancer. She said it was the first time in a very long time that she got to have a night where she actually could feel good, just in general, both good physically and good emotionally and mentally as well. And our good friend and Falcons legend Reggie Kelly was a part of the event. He got to share his messages of inspiration with the ladies who were there as well. So I'm going to give my spotlight and give kudos to the Atlanta Falcons for what they continue to do every year, showing their support for ladies dealing with breast cancer as well in Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So two really great stories, Bob.
Another terrific story, Chris. It just goes to show you the power that these guys have. Some guys take it and run with it. Most of them do, as you and I point out all the time. But there is no other better way to end the show on that kind of note, and especially this October with the breast awareness. I'm sure we'll see more stories with that as a background.
Yes, we will. So great stuff. And, Bob, I can't thank you enough. It's time for us to put a bow on this episode of TNT, and obviously thanking you for your time and for the wonderful job you do every week. Also want to thank Tony Reno and to you, Bob, for bringing Coach Reno on the show tonight, and Tony Collins, Mark Carrier, Levon Kirkland, and Burt Grossman for coming back. And those guys have been wonderful friends year after year. But, Bob, it's always the most fun of all to get to spend Thursdays with you.
Same here, Chris. I feel the same. Again, those were old friends, and when we get a new one on board, I've known Tony for a long time, but I know he'll be listening to this show. He's a big fan, so we'll do it again down the road, and we'll do this again next week, won't we?
Yes, we will. And joining us next week will be former Cowboys offensive lineman Corey Proctor, our good friend and TNT Hall of Famer Eddie Kennison. Always a great time when Eddie is a part of the show. Former Packers offensive lineman Tony Mandritz. It's been a little while. We had Tony on a few years ago, so looking forward to catching up with Tony, getting him back on the show. And Bob, you've got another great guest that's going to join us, Carmen Franzone.
Yes, Carmen, a great, a short career in the major leagues, but obviously played at Fenway and Wrigley Field, and then became an accomplished, and I mean really accomplished, flugelhorn player, and played the national anthem once, Chris, at Wrigley Field on his trumpet. Incredible, and is married to a Grammy Award-winning singer also, so this ought to be something. Yeah,
looking forward to having him on the show. I'm sure he's got a lot of great stories. So Carmen Franzone also going to be a part of the show with us next week as well. Before we let you go, we want to let you know on social media. How can you follow the show? How can you find us? Well, first of all, Thursday Night Tailgate, we got a page there on Facebook. Give us a like. That's very important to us. Plus, both Bob and I have our own Facebook pages as well. Please check out our website, ThursdayNightTailgate.com. On there, you're going to be able to see who some of our future guests are going to be. Plus, we link back to our page over on Podbean, and those guys, we can't thank them enough for featuring us right front and center in their NFL fan category. So they've been very good to us. And if you just enjoy podcasts in general across many genres, they've got everything you're looking for there. Go to podbean.com or download the Podbean app. On Twitter, you can find me at CT Mascaro. Bob is at Bob_Lazzari, and the show is at TNT Podcast. Bob, take us home, my friend.
Okay, Chris, enjoy the weekend. We also want to thank our announcer, Joe LaGenusa, for the great job he always does with our intro and ads. We also want to give a shout-out to Kyle Turley and the Kyle Turley Band for the upcoming outro music. And on behalf of myself and Chris, we thank everyone tonight for listening. We appreciate you the very most. Until next week, good night, Kevin. Good night, Terry. We miss you guys.